Okay, on to part two, body language. There's three aspects of body language that I want to sort of touch on. The first and closely tied in with the first part of the talk is that basics of body language I think are important for client interviews, because you can use the non-verbal communication that your clients are sending you to work out what mood they're in, whether they're being a bit shifty with you, whether they're being evasive or closed up or willing to talk or what have you. So it's very helpful to be able to pick up on the non-verbal communication signals that your clients are sending you during an interview. The second is, it's very important to understand, I think, the basics of body language so you're aware of what messages you're sending to the client. And I was just having a chat to Rolly Hassel, who says that he uses body language in interviews to sort of set the tone and the pace and the vibe of the interview. And there are certain ways you can do that. And the third is more from a barrister's perspective. It's very important to be able to control to a certain extent the non-verbal communication that clients are sending in court when they're giving evidence. Excuse me. So when prepping a witness for court to give evidence, I know a lot of my colleagues do this as well, always have a chat to the witness and tell them that their body language, the way they're behaving, the way they're conducting themselves is going to be very, very important to the judge when the judge, or jury for that matter, is making an assessment of them as a person, as a witness, whether they're truthful. Judges are very, very skilled in picking up non-verbal communication signals from witnesses. They get to see the demeanour of the witness, the way witnesses answer questions, so many things that you just can't pick up from transcript. And, excuse me, I let clients know that and tell them that when they sit down to give evidence, or whether they're standing up, to face the judge, to make eye contact with the judge, to be aware that if they fidget or cover their mouth or touch their hair or whatever when they're giving evidence, not in too much detail because you don't want to completely flummox them and freak them out, but address the judge as Your Honour when they're giving evidence, all these sorts of things. It's so important for establishing credibility and establishing that line of communication between the witness and the judge, because you only get one shot at this. If you've got a case that revolves around the credibility of a witness, appeal courts aren't going to be too interested in overturning a decision that is based purely on credibility or findings of judges of the sort of non-verbal or unwritten evidence that clients gave. So you've got to hammer that home as well. But above and beyond everything else, good communication is just the foundation of, I would suggest, successful relationships both at home and at work. And as I said before, there's been a lot of studies on this, but I think the common statistic that's thrown around is that 90% or thereabouts of communication is not what's said, it's how it's said. And I think the best communicators are able to pick up on those sorts of things. They're sensitive to the power of thoughts and emotions and those things that are communicated non-verbally. Through human experience alone, we all know, we've got a gut feeling when somebody is being evasive or not telling the truth or closed up or, on the other side of the coin, super confident or truthful or submissive or angry. I mean, we all know that from our own human experience, but body language really is just the study of picking up on all those non-verbal communications and translating that gut feeling into something that's present, that you're cognizant of. So things like tone, inflection, volume, physical mannerisms when you're talking are all really, really important. And in this sense, I like to give the example of emails. In my view, emails are very dangerous things because the communication over email is often instantaneous or thereabouts. You're having a conversation with somebody. But so often the tone of an email can be misconstrued. The reader picks up on something that the writer didn't necessarily intend to put forward or to impart. And the other problem with emails is once something's written, it stays written. So often in litigation, as I'm sure a lot of you will be aware, you print out a bunch of emails and you read through them during discovery, and you sort of you can read those emails as words on paper, but you can't pick up on the mood somebody was in when they wrote it, the message they were intending to convey. It can be taken out of context, so an answer to an email can be taken out of context to perhaps the way the email before it was phrased. I mean, all these sorts of things, it's really important that you bear in mind when you're sending emails that a lot of what you're thinking and feeling at the time won't be translated into those words in black and white. So having at least a high-level understanding of body language, in my view, is very important in the context of client interviews for two reasons. One, you'll be more attuned to your client's non-verbal communications and be able to respond to them. And secondly, you'll be more aware about the signals that you're sending. Now, if you sit down in a client interview and you're sitting across the conference table from somebody, you can very often tell what mood the client's in, whether somebody is getting agitated, if you've spoken for long enough, and when somebody else wants to speak. Because people tend to get a bit fidgety and a bit restless when their brains are getting full. They can be eyes sort of dart away. Maybe they start to doodle on their pad. Maybe they start to fidget with their hands. They cross their arms, cross their legs, sort of close up. All those signals are sometimes code for, well, look, I've had enough of this. And if you look at those signals and adjust the way you're talking or hand it over to the client to say, what do you think or what have you, sometimes that's a better way or a good way of getting them to uncross their arms and come forward to the table and lean forward and become engaged in the client interview again. So next time you're in a client interview, just think about that and be aware of it. And you'll be amazed at those non-verbal signals that the clients send. More often than not, I'd suggest to you, you'll know why they're doing what they're doing and what to do about it, because you can just go back to maybe making small talk or have a break or offer them a cup of tea or a glass of water or something like that. And the balance of the interview will be a lot more productive. Now, I've listed a few important aspects of non-verbal communication or body language, and the first is eye contact. Eye contact is absolutely critical. I was just speaking to Andrew Joseph, who's saying that he is, during client interviews, fixated on the client and looks at them and rarely takes notes unless it's something important, because he wants to see the way the clients are reacting to what he's saying and pick up on all the non-verbal communication signals and sort of get the mood and so forth from the client. And I just thought that was fascinating, because it's exactly what I'm talking about. picking up on all those signals tells you so much more than what a client is actually saying in terms of the words coming out of their mouths. So if you've got your head buried in a pad and you're furiously taking notes and you're saying yes, yes, like that, and you're not looking at the client and making eye contact with them, I would suggest to you that you lose a lot of the communication that they're giving you. Eye contact is so important. It's also important for keeping the flow, maintaining the flow of the conversation, engaging the other person's response to what you're saying. If you put a proposition to a client, you can tell by their reaction where they're coming from. I mean, if you ask them a question and they close up and they get all defensive and so forth, I mean, that tells you volumes about perhaps whether they're being honest and open with you or whether they're trying to pull the wool over your eyes. And you can adjust the rest of the client interview around that. Eyes communicate so many things. They can communicate hostility, empathy, affection, hopefully not in a client interview, but attraction, again, probably more relevant to the pub than the conference room. But eyes, there's a saying, eyes are the windows to the soul. That exists for a very good reason, because they are. There's so much you can tell by looking somebody in the eyes. Secondly, the tone of your voice. Things such as tone, pitch, volume, inflection, rhythm and rate are very important communicating elements. Again, not just the words that are coming out of your mouth, but the way they're coming out of your mouth. I could give you so many examples of where you read a sentence on paper and depending on who's delivering that sentence and the volume or the tone or the inflection that somebody's actually delivering those words can make the message that sentence is delivering just so much different. Tone of voice can indicate, sarcasm, anger, affection again, confidence. And subconsciously, when people are talking to you, you do read. Of course, you read their pitch or their tone or their inflection of what they're saying. Sitting position. Now, I think what Rolly was talking about before, and what I really believe is this. If you're sitting down and you choose to sit like this, I mean, that just clearly radiates absolute supreme confidence. Whereas, if you cross your legs and cross your arms, and some girls can even get their foot all the way around the back of their leg like that, they tie themselves into a knot. I'm closed up. Shoulders are shrugged. I'm not open to what you're saying. I'm defensive. You're going to have to work at me to sort of open me up. When people are speaking at you, sometimes it's good to sit back and listen. Whereas when you're talking, to accentuate the nature of what you're saying, it can help to sit forward. So when you're delivering a message, sit forward. When you're listening, sit back. There are ways you can sit that make you look relaxed and confident. Another one of my favourite ones, have you ever seen people sitting like that in a conference, where they've got their hands bridged? That to me suggests that the person thinks that they're probably a little bit more, superior to you in some way. It's like, I'm sort of evaluating what you're saying, but and when people go like that when they talk, I mean, it's a bit of a, it's very sort of sends a message to them. Likewise, when you're talking to somebody and they deliver a message and point their finger, I mean, that can be anger or hostility. If they're talking to you with their palms open like that, usually means that they're telling the truth and that they are submissive. Whereas palms down can tend to indicate that they're not telling the truth. Again, there'll always be exceptions to these rules, but you can gauge what people are saying just by looking at some of those sort of fundamentals of the way people communicate. Boredom, another big non-verbal communication signal, Yeah, and Rolly just did that one. Maybe he's saying, I don't know what the hell this guy's talking about, but he just went like that. As if to say, oh, I don't know. You don't have to say, I don't know, if you're doing that. That's universal. Everyone knows, bugger if I know. When someone's sitting in a conference room and they're sort of like that, that could mean, well, I'm interested and I'm switched on and I'm listening. But if it goes to that, that's almost universally accepted as I'm bored. So if you're sitting there listening to a client like that, that is sending the message that you're bored. And thankfully, there's no one doing that in the room at the moment. Some people gesticulate normally when they talk, and I think it's hilarious watching people who gesticulate wildly when they talk, and their hands are going everywhere, and the fish was this big, and they're sort of dismissive and all this sort of stuff. It's just fascinating. There's a really interesting book, which is the front page of it's in the extract of your materials, and it's by Barbara and Alan Peace, and it's a book on body language, and it contains all the basics. And if you're interested in this, then it pays to just have a look at it. I think it's on Google Books. You don't even have to buy it. You can just have a look at it online. But it's really interesting. All these gesticulations and mannerisms and way people sit, and whether you're standing in a group of people and someone's got their foot pointed to a certain person means that they'd rather be talking to that person than to you. These are all powerful non-verbal signals. If a girl's sitting at a bar or something and she's got her legs crossed and the high heels dangling off the foot, I mean, Barbara and Alan Peace say that that's a sign of interest. These sorts of things. It's all non-verbal. If she's playing with her hair, same sort of thing. It's very interesting stuff. I'm straying off the topic of client interviews a little bit, but. So gestures and body movements, I'd suggest, are very important non-verbal communication methods. Especially important for client interviews is be aware of negative mannerisms. And by that I mean looking down, looking away, doodling on your pad, and my own personal favourite, looking at your watch. Don't ever look at your watch in a client interview. I know that it's difficult sometimes, but all it sends a message, unless you're sort of wrapping it up and getting towards the end, it sends a message that, well, time she's up, not really interested in what you're saying anymore. And I think that sends a very powerful non-verbal signal that you're, you're looking at really sort of wrapping the client up. And unfortunately, again, in my limited experience, a lot of people send those non-verbal communication signals probably when they don't even mean to do it and when they don't know they're doing it. And when those signals are sent, the communication or the trust or the confidence or what have you can be lost or interrupted. Again, it's something that I would suggest improves with practice. So being aware of it and practicing it, it's possible to do that. It's all about translating those gut feelings into present thoughts. And again, a lot of it's to do with experience. I mean, there are people in the room who all of this is pretty much second nature and they know this stuff. And life experiences and, training, what your beliefs are, et cetera, all will affect what you already know about this topic, either innately or having read about it. But I just think it's really, really important stuff, and just knowing a little bit about it will hopefully improve the quality of your client interviews. Look, I'm conscious of time. I did want to leave some time for questions. I've left you, as I say, with a bit of further reading, and probably the most pithy and relevant and impressive and funny book out of all of those is the book by Barbara and Alan Peace. Has anybody got that? I don't know if anyone's actually got it, but It's really, really good stuff. And I'm not suggesting that you install, closed security cameras in your conference rooms to check whether a client's pupils are dilating when they tell you something or whatever. I mean, that's sort of taking it to the next level, and that's what our friend on Lie to Me does. I'm not suggesting you check whether their palms are sweaty when they're talking to you, but these basic sort of principles of non-verbal communication are really powerful tools. Certainly from a barrister's perspective, it just can't, the importance of it can't be overstated when you get a client in a witness box, because it's the difference between getting evidence across in an impressive way and an unimpressive way. And as I say, you only get one shot at that, so you've got to get it right. So that's probably all I have in terms of the paper, but I'm really happy to answer any questions or just enter into a bit of discussion if anybody's got any thoughts that they might want to share. One thing that Rolly did say to me before as well was that it's all well and good saying go off and dictate a huge file note after a client conference, but the reality of a lot of small practitioners is that they can't charge for that. And what Rolly does, and Andrew Joseph said this as well, is that use the facts that you've ascertained in the first client interview to form the basis of a letter, and send that letter to the client saying, I confirm that we met, confirm the facts or da-da-da-da or these, that and the other, and maybe outline your bullet points of what you've talked about, your strategy going forward. I would suggest that kills two birds with one stone. Obviously, it's a very impressive first communication to the client, and it also provides that valuable piece of paper on the file to come back to jog your memory about what's been said and discussed and so forth. I'm also aware that file notes are often, sometimes they can be discoverable and see the light of day again, so you might not want to sort of go into too much detail about your preliminary thoughts of the client, but I'll leave that with you. Anyone got any questions, comments, etc.? Yes?
How do you approach the question of cost of your client? Seems to be for solicitors the main thing they're concerned about. How do you approach it in the first interview?
I reckon the question is, how do you approach the question of costs in the first interview? I think that's a fantastic question, and it's always the elephant sitting in the corner of the room, isn't it? Because let's face it, clients, amongst all their other concerns, are probably concerned about the fact they're about to spend a lot of money. My suggestion would just be, and I try and adopt this approach with solicitors, just be completely open and honest about it. If the client wants an estimate of fees or the question of costs, obviously you have to do your letter under the Legal Profession Act setting out your estimate anyway, your engagement letter. But I think in that respect, clients appreciate honesty, and just be absolutely upfront and honest about it, and just say, look, based on what you've told me so far, I think these steps are going to be involved in your matter. If it becomes litigious, we'll need to engage a barrister. Typically, preparation for this sort of matter would cost in the vicinity of. Lay it on the line up front as early as you possibly can. And I think clients will appreciate, once they get over the initial shock of the zero, amount of zeros at the end of the figure, they'll digest that and appreciate the honesty. Certainly there's nothing worse, in my experience, for client relationships than over-promising and under-delivering. So saying that an estimate of fees for this matter will be sort of $5 to $7 grand and you end up charging 20. I mean, there are your obligations under the Legal Profession Act. Obviously, if you perceive that there will be, or if there's an adjustment to your estimate, you've got to advise the client of that in writing, just as we barristers do. But I think probably openness, honesty, and just complete candour are probably the best principles there. You can guarantee that when you do give the client perhaps the initial estimate, then their body language might change a bit, but I think it's a necessary evil. I mean, clients know that they're going to spend money when they come to see a lawyer, and I don't think it's in anyone's interest to sort of, as I say, underestimate. Yes.
More just maybe an observation, a comment, just applying skills you talked about, to say as a barrister, even on a solicitor, a lot of appearance work.
Yes.
Looking at the bench, things I got taught 20 odd years ago, always look at the bench, look at the body language of the magistrate, judge, whatever.
Absolutely.
Often they won't say that they're fiddling if they're not looking at you or looking at the, or even if your opponent, they're not looking at their opponent, they're fiddling and so on. Their language, their body is becoming harder and so on. You've lost them. Knowing when to pull back, adjust accordingly. It's the same principles that the client interviewed.
Yes. I couldn't agree more with that. I mean, the comment was, just for the purposes of the tape, that you've got to watch the body language coming from the bench, and I probably should weave that into the paper if I give it again, because it is so important. I mean, you can tell so much from what the bench is doing. If you've piqued the interest of a magistrate or a judge, usually the pen will start writing furiously, or if you're taking evidence in chief or cross-examining a witness, and you've got to keep an eagle eye on what the bench is doing anyway, but if the judge is looking at your client and they've got an eye contact or something going, I mean, that's pretty powerful, because you can tell that the judge is engaged, that they're interested, that they're listening, and those non-verbal communication signals are being sent. So absolutely, body language from the bench is just a huge part, certainly from a barrister's perspective. And you do know when you've lost a judge or when they're just not getting it. And if you back up a bit, especially in submissions, if you back up a bit, just know when you've got to develop a point a bit more or repeat something or whatever. Everybody's human, and in a trial, the judge is the most important human in the room, because it's that person you've got to convince. So yeah, no, that's a fantastic point. There was some non-verbal communication without the hand lifting there. Anybody else want to ask a question? Well, I noticed it's 8:45 and you've all got busy practices to run, and I hope if you have a client interview today, then you may just think about one or two of the things that we've covered today. But as I say, it's an area that I'm particularly interested in, and people are a very important part of our practice, and watching how they communicate with you is pretty key to that, I would suggest. So thank you very much for your time.
Thanks very much, Simon. As someone who has spent the morning writing, as Simon said not to, and who gets regularly accused of looking at my watch, and I've listened to what Simon said. I've got much to learn, I'm sure, like everyone else in the room. Starting next week, we've got a month in August of commercial litigation breakfast briefings. Invitations have gone out if you've missed, and reminders will go out as well. But they look interesting topics to me, so if you're a commercial litigator, I would commend them to you. Thanks very much for coming, and thanks again to Simon.